Buddy, it's Andrew Lowen with Deliverance, here to talk about the future of Deliverance and when I consider Deliverance to be ready. So I have only a few questions, but a lot of content. I intend on giving an update about the future of Deliverance, when Deliverance is going to Kickstarter, and other things like that. So the first thing I will do is just go through questions and answer them in the order that they're asked. But first, I'll give people a second to join because I just started the video. And while I'm doing that, I have a thought that I wanted to share. So I'm thinking about adding an email to the month, adding a second email to the monthly emails I send out. I just send out typically a roundup of information with a recap of what it is that we've done and maybe a video link to an Ask Me Anything video and where I'm going to be in the future as far as conventions go or where Deliverance is going to be, things like that. But I'm thinking that since we're doing a weekly Ask Me Anything, I'm getting good feedback on them. I wanted to see if you guys would like an additional email that would just simply have an Ask Me Anything video that's topical, probably the most interesting video delivered once a month. So Brian, welcome guys. Brian, you asked how many angels are in the game. We have 8 angels at the moment that are in the game. How many have I designed? About 15. So we'll see how many actually make it into the game. PAX San Antonio, send me information on PAX San Antonio. I'm definitely open. I'm definitely open-minded. And right, here we go. Okay, so when do I consider Deliverance ready and the future of Deliverance? The first question on this list, Jamie Jameson asked, he stated, you have shared that you are considering self-publishing versus a more traditional route. What has given you pause on just publishing through Kickstarter? Do you have concerns that if you go through a traditional publisher that they will want to tweak your game or make changes? And lastly, and most importantly, what do you think the time frame is before a final decision is made? So I'll answer just in typical or in normal order from top to bottom. So what has given me pause on just publishing through Kickstarter? Nothing gives me pause on publishing through Kickstarter. I believe that a game like this needs a stage like Kickstarter to really amplify the message. So in any case, whether we would use a publisher or whether I would become the publisher, we will use Kickstarter to amplify the message beyond what we can pay for with Facebook ads and that kind of thing. There is something really special about organic sharing, that happens during Kickstarter when people get really excited. So the traditional publisher, typically they do want to tweak a game. Many times a publisher would take a game like mine and say, maybe they want to retheme it to zombies. So I have to have more control than that with Deliverance. So I'm going to try to license Deliverance as an intellectual property because the art is finished, the game design is, going to be finished at that time, and the audience is already building. The intent is to license, I guess, more like maybe like a company like Disney, or licensing Star Wars to FFG, for example. Although I don't have quite the fan base as that Star Wars has, but that's the idea. So I have to make sure that in any case, whether I go a publishing route or a self-publishing route, that I maintain a certain level of control over the integrity of the design, over the game itself. We need to make sure that the sword stays sharp and that it isn't dulled down for money, for money's sake. So, and lastly, and most importantly, what do I think the time frame is before a final decision is made? I don't have a specific time frame to give you. However, I can say that all work is moving forward. when we do work with a publisher or when we do decide to self-publish, I'll let you know. I don't have a certainty in when we're going to choose one or the other. I don't actually see that as the critical path right now. That will become very important, and I am talking to publishers right now. However, the critical path at the moment is in playtesting and in art and that sort of thing. So that decision remains before us. However, what I will say is that publishers do have schedules, and I can't just barge into a publisher and say, hey, here's my game. They say, we would like to publish it. And then I dictate the day they're going to launch. It would not work that way. I don't think I'd make many friends at publishing companies if I did that. So the final decision remains before me. However, I don't have more concrete information to share with you than that. And I will say, I'll reiterate that if I believed that was the most important thing that I had to have resolved, I would have it resolved. But the critical path is the one that I'm on right now. The things that need to get done are the playtesting and the art, absolutely important, and the publishing situation will be ironed out as well. And again, I'm working on it, but I don't have anything concrete to share. So I'm sorry for the very non-answer. So Z Zemer asks, if a game designer goes to Kickstarter or another crowdfunding option to publish their idea, what would you say are the advantages and disadvantages of bringing a finished product ready for manufacturing versus a product with a solid foundation and a lot of room for backer input and growth and change at the outset of the campaign? So what Z is asking is, when, let's say, Deliverance is complete, the art's done, the design is done, the mechanics are set in stone, the fear is that I wouldn't be open to backer input during a Kickstarter campaign. However, I don't look at it that way. I personally view it as backer input is super important. And even if I personally consider a component ready and finished, an art piece finished, if backers want something added or changed, then that's going to be something that we have to be willing to listen to backers. It's really important to me that we're willing to listen to backers, even when I think something's finished. Many times I've thought something's finished. I've shared a piece of art and said, hey, look at this finished piece. And then somebody says, well, I have a problem with it. And then I'll look at it and say, well, yeah, that actually is a problem. And I'll change it. So I believe that all campaigns that go to Kickstarter should be open to backer input, no matter what. And I will say that it's 2019. Back 4 or 5 years ago, you could get away with sharing an idea, something that wasn't fully play tested and fully thought out. You cannot get away with that today. You're going to get into big trouble if you have too much that is up in the air. People want to know, like solo players like Jamie Jameson or myself want to know, have you thoroughly tested solo mode, or is it just tacked on? If it's something that doesn't seem like you've tested it enough, then it's going to turn people off. So Deliverance has been tested hundreds and hundreds of times now, but we still need to be open to backer input. So we need to come up with a game that we think is ready and is solid. We'll share how to play it, what it's like, and backers will give feedback, and we should be open-minded to changing. So I hope that helps. And sometimes when you asked a follow-up about going to a publishing company with an idea instead of going to Kickstarter. If the publishing company looks at a game, absolutely, even as someone who would hold the Deliverance intellectual property, I would need to be open-minded to what they had to say. Because as a businessman, I run a business. I need somebody, if somebody wants to get into any kind of partnership with me, I need to know that they're willing to work with me and listen to my ideas. And of course, I want to listen to their ideas, but it's important to me that I would listen to a publisher, that I would take their advice sometimes and not say my way or the highway, because then it won't work out very well. So I need to be open-minded to backer input as well as publisher input, if that's how we go. So now I want to share on Deliverance and Kickstarter. One other question before I do that. When do I consider Deliverance ready? When do I consider Deliverance to be ready? Pat Aquiloni asked this question. It was a great question, and let me read it. So, with changes still being made to the game, how do you or will you decide the point to stop? Basically, how do you know when to stop editing and call it good enough? Pat is also a game designer, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him at a BGG Spring in Dallas, Texas, and he's a smart guy. So that's a great question. Games are never perfect, just good enough. When I say that, I mean that Deliverance, in my mind as a designer, I may never consider it ready, but the way that I kind of solve that problem is that I plan expansions. So, I've eliminated many different mechanics from Deliverance. I wanted you to be able to item craft and other things like that, and I've eliminated that from the game, but we may add that back in an expansion. I have 15 angels, as I mentioned before, that I've designed, and half of them we probably won't be able to put into the base game, so that's expansion material. I have demons and bosses and ideas for different timelines, or rather we'll say different times in history that angels have acted. We can do expansions where we go back in time, forward in time. So the game is never done, just at a certain point, and so at a certain point it becomes ready for Kickstarter. When I believe the game is ready is when, and actually Deliverance, we've created the framework for the game. It is going to be this, and when this is done, it goes to Kickstarter, or we print it, or whatever. So we have created a really amazing skirmish mode. We have a campaign that we're working on, and when the art is done for the elements that exist already, the game is theoretically ready. So I've also, just for so you guys know, I've sent out manufacturing quotes, and I've had a couple back. I've been pretty pleased with what I've seen, and we're pretty close to our final components list. We're pretty close to a lot, and so the game is very close to ready. In my mind, I see the finish line for the base game. And do I see Deliverance as a game that could have expansions, new areas, angels and villains? That was asked by Alex Marone. And yes, I think I touched on that a little bit. Deliverance is a game that should absolutely have expansions. We could introduce, mini expansions with a new angel, new demon boss, maybe new demon minion, and a mini campaign. We could, and then of course that would add richness to the base game, because now you have a new character to play, you have a new, demon boss to fight, you have that mini campaign that you can play with other characters and that sort of thing. That would be, maybe a few extra cards and that sort of thing. It would be very easy to do. New locations would be a little bit more expensive from a component standpoint, because the way the game works, you play on map tiles that are about a square foot. It's actually more like 11 inches by 11 inches that lay on the board. And if I were to create new map tiles, they would need to be in the same town at the same time. we might expand into the factory or into the, whatever location. So I'm saying the factory location would be a tile. That tile would be an expensive thing to ship because it's big. It's an 11-inch square. So I don't know that we would expand to new areas unless we had an actual box expansion. So a big box expansion, as they call it. And let's see, do I ever see, now this is a little off topic, but I'll answer it. Do you ever see a mechanic in Deliverance that if the right conditions are met, that a fallen can find God's forgiveness and be redeemed, thus changing sides? And I don't plan on adding that mechanic. This was asked by Dave Dupuis. Sorry if I got your name wrong, but that mechanic I will not add to the game because Deliverance is a theologically sound game. We're using the lore from Judeo-Christian tradition and from the Bible and that kind of thing. So that lore states that angels are good, demons are bad, and Satan is the worst, period. So there's no changing sides. Whether or not, and yes, I have thought about demons not being on the same side as other demons, and maybe they're being separate factions. That's something that is very interesting to me as a topic. But for this game, I've chosen to kind of stay away from that, to not touch it with a 10-foot pole so that, I don't get myself into trouble. All right, so that seems like all the questions. So I'll answer, when is Deliverance going to Kickstarter? And it's a little bit of a clickbait, but I put a little bit of a thought down on some notes. I have the notes. So recently we expanded our playtest team, and we've been receiving some really awesome feedback. We've been making some minor changes to very important pieces of the game, very important pieces of how, that have fundamentally changed the balance of the game. So angels dealing, let's say, an average of 3 or 4 damage in the beginning of the game. We need to refine that based on other changes that we've chosen to make, and we need to play test further. So I've never announced a Kickstarter date for Deliverance because I've never yet announced that, at least because I have not been ready. I've not been certain, and I want to be absolutely certain. So I have funny enough, a Bible verse that I was reading in the book of Philippians. It's chapter 2, Philippians 2, verse 4. It says, "Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." And it is in everybody's interest that I don't set a date. We have been playtesting. We've been refining the components of the game. There are a couple of issues that we're looking to resolve. Number one, we're creating the campaign, and that needs to be tested. Number two, there are several core mechanics that we've tweaked. We haven't changed anything. So fundamentally, you're still an angel defending saints, battling demons in this town of Fallbrook. But the way the saints are interacting has been modified a little bit. The way the darkness cards are coming out is modified, and that has a big effect on the way that the game plays. So I'm not ready to announce that because I feel like I would be limiting my playtesting, and in the end, I want rather limiting the time that I'm allowing my playtesters to test. And I really want to give the playtesting the time that it deserves so that we get the absolute best product we can get. And I think that the player experience is almost there. I mean, we're 95% there as far as people feeling like an ultra powerful angel battling demons, and the game seems to be rolling at a nice cadence, and there's not a lot of downtime. It feels great, but I feel that playtesting is so important, and we're working on just tightening things up. And I think that we need to give the time to play test the game. So what does that mean? That means that Deliverance, I originally had intended that Deliverance would go to Kickstarter in 2019. So fall 2019 was my initial thought. Winter 2019 was what I had pushed back, but we're definitely going to give playtesting the time that it needs. It needs another couple of months, and then we can start to send review copies and things like that. So we're looking legitimately at a minimum of 6 months out before we actually hit Kickstarter, and that would represent 3, maybe 4 months of campaign development, and also playtesting and sending copies to reviewers so that we had everything ready to go for a big bombshell Kickstarter. And so so again, it might be disappointing for some people to hear that the game is not going to be up on Kickstarter this year. However, I think that in the end, the wait will be worthwhile. And truthfully, I don't see the time changing unless I cut playtesting short. So if we cut playtesting short and we rush the campaign, we can cut the amount of time that it takes to get from here to Kickstarter. But I think that would be doing a disservice to you guys, and I wouldn't want to do that. I want to look out for you as well as look out for myself and for the game. Now, also, of course, there are publication issues. I haven't selected a publisher, and of course, as I'd mentioned earlier, whether I self-publish or select a publisher, that may have bearing on the time frame as well. So, just for those of you that pray, keep Deliverance in your prayers. I really appreciate it, and keep the faith. And I hope that me sharing this allows some you guys to calm a little bit, as far as I know you guys are just really excited, and I don't want your excitement to turn into exhaustion. And what I'm looking for is just to I want to support you guys and give you what you want, and I want you guys to support the project in getting what it needs. That said, I'm expanding the playtester pool again. We are working on updating the card text a little bit. We have some angel and demon tweaks we're making, and some art updates that we're making that's really going to be, it's going to look so amazing on the table. And I had mentioned this before, about 2 weeks ago, and in the email that I had sent out, that we're expanding our playtester pool. We are looking to expand a minimum of 5 additional hard copy playtesters, and we have a Slack channel and everything all set up. So I'm definitely looking for some people willing to commit to playtesting. I've had a number of volunteers. I'm looking for a minimum of 30 playtests in 2 months, or maybe it's 20 playtests in 3 months. I don't remember. Give me 30 in 2 months, though. That would be amazing. So if you think that you can do that, please send me an email or a Facebook message on Insiders, the Insiders group. That would be deliverancethegame@gmail.com, or send me a message, Andrew Lowen, on Facebook. You can hit me up in Deliverance Game Insiders. You can send me a message on Deliverance, the board game Facebook page, or just send me a message, add me as a friend, and send me a message there. So that is pretty much it. I appreciate you guys for watching, and I will, I guess I will sign off. Catch you around.